All right. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? This is a nice little crowd. Thank you for showing up. We're really excited to have the team from Austin, the Texas Board of Architectural Examiners, come over to come and talk to us about the process of getting licensed in the state of Texas. Every state you may or may not know, but every state their requirements are slightly different. And so when you become a candidate, it can sometimes be a little bit confusing. If you decided to get licensed, if you decided to go to school, say in a different state, and you were working in a different state but still wanted to get licensed in Texas, there's a way to do that. They can explain a little bit more of that as well. So there's several ways that one can become a licensed architect, but the very most important thing is to know what path you need to take to be able to do so. Of course, everybody knows the first step, right? Which everybody's here to get their education. That's the first step, is to get a master's or a bachelor's of architecture and to get started. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that we need to do. So I'm going to pass it on to, let me first introduce Mike Alvarado, Jackie Blackmore, and Steve Ramirez. They came straight from Austin just to talk to you all. So pass it on to them.
Thank you. Our program today is geared toward the 2-year program that you got going here, and then going to the next level. Everything we do, we try to tailor it to our audience. But if there's anything you want to talk about other than what we're going to speak to you about, you can raise your hand if there's something been on your mind. We'll be able to answer all your questions. If you want to raise your hand during, or you want to wait till the end, or see us personally at the end, that's fine too. Well, once we get talking, and then questions come up in your mind, you wanna ask, go ahead, feel free to do that. Again, I am the registration manager for the Texas Board of Architecture. Jackie Blackmore is the exams and registration coordinator. So she's been there for a long time and has helped thousands of architects get their final license, the whole process. And Steve Ramirez he's the investigator. He's going to talk to you at the end about staying on the straight and narrow while you're a student, while you start working, and also not so much as when you become an architect, because there's a whole set of rules after that, but everything right before that. So the Board of Architecture was started back in 1937 by the 45th legislature, after the New London school explosion, in which 295 students and teachers were killed. Has anybody researched that and heard about that situation? You can Google it and it'll come up. It's great reading about why all this happened. And so in order to practice safe architecture, the legislature created this agency to register architects. And health, safety, and welfare is all we do. So our main objective is to protect the public. And the way we do that is to have professionals in architecture and keep up with them every year. And we're not so much as we love that we'll advocate for people to get their license at the end. But our main objective is to keep the public safe. So like you've heard of AIA and the other organizations. Those are the ones that really advocate for you guys to become an architect and take your continuing education and keep everything on the straight and narrow path. And we help the public, but you're going to learn more about that when Steve presents his part. And the way we do that is we ensure that applicants are fully qualified. We go after non-registrants practicing architecture or using the titles. And so for all three professions. So we also license landscape architects and interior designers. So make sure as registrants, you don't bribe school board members or fail to do your CE, things like that, continuing education. And we do publish by law, if you break a rule or some, we do have to put it in our newsletter at the back. And it says you got fined and how much you got fined or whatever the penalty was. So along with NCARB, I'm pretty sure y'all have gotten a little bit about NCARB. NCARB facilitates most of what you're going to be doing, your experience and your exams. The education is something that that's kind of NCARB also has accreditation program. Again, getting licensed is a career move. Y'all are on that path right now. How many plan to finish it up? I mean, you're starting right now, but you see you're in it. You plan to go all the way, get that license, get a state license to be an architect. Have y'all thought that far? Everybody wants to do that at the end? Yeah. So NCARB is the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. They govern or they facilitate all the registration for all the 55 jurisdictions, all the states, plus Guam, Puerto Rico, and some of the Virgin Islands. And earning your license, some of you have gone to this screen, this registry. It's a great tool that NCARB has right here. You can go, if you're thinking about, hey, Texas is not going to be my state, or you want to go into New Mexico or California, you can check out what all their requirements are for each. Each state has their own, like Professor Moreno was explaining. Yeah, for if say for instance you're thinking I want to work in California, so you'll look at that, you'll click on California, and you'll see what their requirements are. It may not be like Texas, so. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jackie. She's going to do one part, and you can ask any questions.
Hi. My part is very small. So I'm just gonna go over just the basics information that we'll cover just so that you can get started. The education, which you're already there. The experience. I'm not sure, is anyone already enrolled in AXP with NCARB yet documented? I don't know who's working or documenting any experience hours. Yay. Cause you can start doing that as soon as you can. That's great. Are any of you working for firms locally? No, just school? Good. Cause then you'll roll into the exam. So now, I'll put a different one here. So back to NCARB's website, and we keep focusing on them because they're the national board, but they have a gob of information on what each state board requires and the architectural degree programs, which you guys are already sort of on the right track anyway. Here's a lot of the Texas schools, and we visit them as well. And the NAP, accredited degree programs, pretty few.
So you can see that those of you who want to go to that NAB accredited program, those are the schools that you're going to want to look at if you're going to go and get the master's. Texas A&M this last year started an IPAL program. I don't know if y'all are aware of that. IPAL program is where if you get into the program, they facilitate you getting an internship and going through the whole process while you're in school. So people the students that do that, they get jobs lined up for the summer, internships, and you can actually start taking the exams while you're in school. And it's like a master's program, but you're doing it everything before you graduate. So once you graduate, then you get your state license almost immediately because you're all done with AXP, you're done with the degree, you're done with everything. And so it's Texas A&M was the first one that wanted to get involved. And we just signed a letter for UT Arlington in support of their program. They want to start an IPAL program. And it's a great program for around the nation. A lot of working students that don't have a lot of resources, they can get in there. They can do work in the evenings. The companies really facilitate getting all their experience. And so it's a good path to think about if you ever, hopefully we can get more universities here to start an IPAL program, because it's becoming more popular.
So this is the accredited programs in Texas, and these are the non-accredited programs. Texas currently requires, and for licensure in Texas through the exam route, that applicants have a NAB accredited degree. So just keep that in mind if you go through that route, that you graduate with a NAB degree.
So one of the things Jackie just mentioned, so y'all probably have learned that this, the 2-year degree, and a lot of you, Professor Moreno was saying, transfer into Texas Tech, which is a Bachelor of Science degree. And so that is considered non-accredited. So then you'd have to look for a master's program. And that's there's a few schools, almost all the schools have non-accredited programs that we saw before. And there's pathways, and that's what we do, Jackie and I, there's pathways for students that say, well, I can't do the master's program. What do I do? Life gets in the way. You get your 4-year degree, but then what? Well, you can't start taking the exam to Texas right away, but there's additional paths of trying to get a license. So if you have a question about that, then just give us a call and we can help you out. We can tell you, okay, what's the next step? If you can't do school, what would you do? So
then the next thing you got to think about, if you're not doing it already, is earning your work experience, your employment. And the Architectural Experience Program is also overseen by NCARB, and they also have these different categories that you have to achieve or task to different, at least 1,860 hours is a minimum that you have to achieve just to get into the exam path. A is for working under the direct supervision of an architect, and O is for other. I can't think of an example for that, like it's on, oh, there you go, other work experience. Other opportunities, CSI, community-based, site visits, construction work. If any of this sounds familiar to you, you may already be involved in it. That will count. These are the 6 tasks for the categories that you would have to experience, areas that you would have to complete. They also match up to the 6 exam sections. These are, it tells you the exact amount of hours, how many tasks for each program, and I think the total amount is 3740 hours. Jurisdiction requirements, this is NCARB's, tells you which state has an AXP program or requires it. I think there's a handful that do not. You report in 8-month increments, up to 5 years, so that you don't lose credit, so that you can get 100% of the credit that you're earning. After up to or anything more than 5 years, you only get half of that credit.
So if you jump into the internships and say, for instance, you graduate from here and you're ready and you transfer, but you also want to work in the summer, there's some architecture firm that wants to, hire you. That experience you're gaining, as long as you're getting paid, that's hours that you can count in your AXP record. And you don't want to lose sight of that, because back to, you know, if you wait longer than the 8 months, it's only going to count 50%. And then if you keep waiting longer, that supervisor that supervised you during that time may not want to or forget that you worked there for 2 months and doesn't remember what you did and doesn't want to sign off and approve on your hours. And so when you have that AXP record, those supervisors have to approve those hours before NCARB will account them to your credit. So make sure that you get with a firm and make sure you keep tabs of those hours. And once you got them in and they're approved, they're with you forever in your NCARB record. So
Yeah,
it'll be
don't
10 years,
expire.
10 years from now, they said, "Hey, you needed, you know, those hours for your internships." It's going to be hard to go back and get them. So keep up with them.
Yeah, NCARB created a new app actually where you can go in there and document that through their app, as well as their online through their website. The AXP guidelines, it's a lot of stuff, but worth knowing. Starting your council record, that's NCARB's, that's their current fee. We always mention NCARB first, and then we come second. So you would pay your fees to them. They have annual fees. If you're lucky enough to work for a firm that would cover your fees, that'd be awesome. I'm going to give this over to Mike, and this will just cover the exam information. Did anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot of. Yeah. We always suggest, I recommend going with NCARB first because that's where a majority of the massive information that you're going to have to provide to them, your school transcripts, your AXP hours and the signatures, the supervisors and all that stuff. Get them to get that all covered and approved, and then they will ask, where can we send your record now? Or who do I notify? Well, they send me an email saying, this person's interested in your jurisdiction in testing. Here's their information, and they send it to me, and then I just upload it. Get you approved, and then you can get the exam started. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and NCARB is usually pretty good about kind of guiding you through, okay, now you've done this, let's move on to this. Okay, you're done with this. It's time to move your record to a state board when you're ready to start testing. And then they would reach out to that that state board's exam coordinator and notify them of that. And then I reach out to you and give you more information. We have our fees and our application fees just to get you approved. But the most of the task and the massive information you have to provide is through the National Council. And then you get to do the hard stuff in the exam. So you're welcome.
Any other questions? So the big thing everybody's always, it's the examination. As Professor could tell you, it's not that easy. So as you can see, these 6 sections all coincide with the path of the experience. It's the same blocks, the same titles. And so NCARB has prepared each one to go right into the exam for that experience that you gained. And so one thing I do want to bring up is that what we were talking about earlier before we started is that there's plenty of resources when you're ready. I don't want, because y'all are in the 2-year program right now, I don't want to inundate you with a lot of stuff with the ARE, because this is going to happen 2 or 3 years or at least from after you graduate. But if you want to get a head start, you want to start, once you have an NCARB record started, they give you free access to all the tools that they have, practice exams, things like that, that you're going to want and you're going to need to get that exam passed. And I suggest, because what we see, we get all the scores, pass, failed scores, and Texas pass rate used to be about 60% on the 4.0, the previous exam. Now we're in 5.0, we're down to 42% pass rate. So that the exam for a lot has gotten harder. So, and each exam section's $235. So when you go in there, you got to make sure you're going to get it a good effort. And sometimes the firm you're with will pay for all of it as you go, but I don't know if they'll pay one shot for all 6 sections, or maybe, okay, you tried them enough, we're not paying anymore, it's going to be on your own pocket. So we want to show you that there's plenty of tools that you can use to try to get ready for that exam once you're ready. So in Texas, quickly, we just want to show that in when you start taking the exams and you pass probably 3 of them, there's a grant, it's $500, and we'll reimburse you that much. But, and you know, that's if, you know, you're not getting any help from your employers. So once you had completed, so say for let's move forward. You've taken care of your education, your experience, your examination. You're ready to get licensed. You'll be one of these current active Texas architects. Over 14,000 architects are active in Texas now, and emeritus architects almost 1,500, and we have some inactive architects. And currently, there's over almost 3,500 candidates taking the exam in one form and another. So that's a lot. Texas is the 3rd biggest as far as states. We kind of like between 3rd and 4th, depending, for the licensed architects and exam candidates, behind California and New York. So a lot of people like to go through California and New York to get their final license. So for the next steps, find firms after you're ready, that you're working, that support the path to licensure. If that's what you're going to want to do, get with a firm that does that. Ask questions during your interview, so that way you know you're going to be a right fit. Because if we want you to get licensed, and instead of ones that say, hey, we just need somebody to draw up documents for us, we need a drafter, we need a designer. We got enough people that will stamp the drawings. That might not be what you want. You say, I want to be an architect, I want you to prepare me for that. Connect with NCARB architect licensing advisors, Jackie and I, and then others in your school. Do y'all have one? You are okay. But a student advisor. Okay, you can join. You can become a student advisor for your school. AIAS, that's AIA Student Chapter or Emerging Professionals. So again, we're going to go quickly over the steps on what you're going to do. You start your NCARB AXP record, complete your accredited art degree, and that's unless you're going through an alternate option. You'll need 6 months of ACE setting experience that you can get while you're in college. So when you graduate, you're ready to take the exam if you want to take the exam. That means you have to work under a registered architect, and he approves your hours 6 months worth. Then you apply to TBAE as an exam candidate. Once you're approved after we get all your documents from NCARB, and will allow you, we click the box and says, at NCARB, and says you are ready to take the exam. And once all the exams are passed and AXP is approved, NCARB will submit your final record to us. You'll be notified once we approve your file. You have to pass a fingerprint check in Texas. Then you sign a final registration statement, and that statement says you're going to work by Texas rules and regulations. You're one of our architects, and this is the promise, the contract you have with us, that you're going to maintain all of your continuing education, and you're going to work in an ethical manner. You pay your final registration fee, and you receive your license money. Wanted to point out, I don't know if any of you have talked to Patricia Rosales Vera. She's a new architect. She's from here. She's also a licensing advisor, and that's her information. If you have any questions on how and you don't want to talk to NCARB or us, you would talk to her. She'll show you the path on what she took to get licensed. And of course, your professors also, you can ask him anytime. What's, he's very knowledgeable about what it takes since he's going through the process right now. Issue. Okay. And then all the social media. We didn't change Twitter to X yet, but that's stuff that you can look up online and see what the path's going. And again, why should you get licensed? And of course, it's professional development, it's expertise, licensed architects. That's a badge you're going to wear. People, you can call yourself a licensed architect. People are going to know you're knowledgeable. You're respected as other architects. The opportunity of working on your own. You don't want to work for a firm after you get a license, start your own. You can stamp your own drawings. More opportunity, financial, mentorship. You can mentor candidates just like yourselves. Then you'll be also equal status to other licensed professionals, landscape architects, registered interior designers, engineers, higher potential for progress, leadership, and more ways to practice. And if there's any questions, there's our information, Jackie, me, and then NCARB, customer service, anytime. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve. He's our enforcement guy. Don't get too scared.
Okay, so so Mike and Jackie have gone over, who we are, what we do, and the path to registration. And as he said, I'm here to talk about laws and enforcement, and specifically those that are applicable to you now. So, as Mike said earlier, our mission being to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the public. And so in addition to one of the main objectives, or one of the main ways we do that, is to ensure that the registrants meet minimum standards to practice. So the question is, how else does TBAE help to protect the health, safety, and welfare? Well, it's been also mentioned, we do it through continuing education requirements. The rules require that registrants attain or complete 12 hours of continuing education credit hours every year. And that's to help ensure that they're keeping up with safety regulation updates that are occurring in the industry, rules updates, and all sorts of updates that are happening in the field, or in the industry. We also do it through information that's put out in our newsletter. Probably every 3 months, we put out what's called the quarterly news, licensing news. And in it, we typically have really relevant information for you that has to do with some rule or something that's been going on that we've been getting questions about. And so we try to develop and have articles in this newsletter that are beneficial to you. So that's another, and by doing that, we're helping to educate, the registrants. This is another way we do it. Both Jackie and Mike have mentioned all the different schools that we come out to visit. And we're really excited to be out here today to carry that on, to give you information about not just registration, but about the rules. So again, the rules are there for once you become registered. There's all the rules related to what it takes to become registered, but it's our job to enforce and make sure that registrants are abiding by those regulations. Most of the rules that I'm talking about, or that are within the rule book, apply to registrants. However, we've tailored our presentation, and the reason I'm here with the enforcement department is because there are rules that apply to you right now as what we call non-registrants. And it's not so that, as Mike said, to scare you. We heard from after our presentation at Texas A&M that apparently I scared the bejeebers out of the students with, and that's not the intent. The intent is to continue to help you build the healthy respect that you're currently building for the profession that you plan to go into, and also to make sure that you're aware of the rules that are applicable to you right now. And one of those is the title law. Okay, so if I ask for a show of hands, I would bet that most of y'all probably are aware that after you finish your education, either here or after you finish your bachelor's degree or your master's degree in architecture, that you're not yet able to use the title architect, right? I mean, you've probably heard that somewhere along the line that you can't do that. Okay? So, but there's more to it than that. And we've mentioned to you that at some point there's going to be a whole process before you actually become registered. After you get your education, you're on the path to completing your experience. I think most of y'all said that at the moment you're not currently working in firms. You're busy completing your education. But as that progresses, you may find yourself even in school working in the summers or in other times when you're able to in an architectural firm. And certainly when you graduate, you're going to be gaining those hours under an architectural firm. Okay. So what we see quite a bit is non-registrants using a host of different titles out there. And this is what we're trying to provide education about. And what we see is those titles being carried into social media and the different networking platforms that are out there. So we're going to just quickly review the main part of the title rule. And the title rule says that only duly registered architects and architectural businesses are authorized to use any form of the word architect or the word architecture to describe themselves and to describe services they offer and perform in Texas. Now, there is an exception to that, and that is a person that's enrolled in the AXP program that we've been talking about. The exception is, in terms of title, is architectural intern. That's the lone exception. We get questions all the time from people that are wanting to use a title and also from architects. Can I have an intern or I have a person who's not registered yet, and is this title okay to use? Okay, and so we get quite a few questions about titles. So, since I reviewed that rule, we're going to do a quick little pop quiz here for you. So, of these 5 titles that you see here, architectural associate, architectural designer, architectural project manager, project architect, or intern architect, which of these are okay to use before you become registered? Anybody want to guess? Well, the answer would be none of them are authorized to use. I know that we mentioned that there's an exception, architectural intern. We want to clarify that we sometimes see people using intern architect, and though it's a small kind of splitting hairs difference, it's still the exception is architectural intern. So that's real important to know. Now, sometimes there's a dilemma, or you may be faced with a dilemma when you're actually out there working for an architectural firm. And that dilemma is that you start working there and the principal or whoever's in charge assigns a title to you, one of these. And that's typically the way it goes. They're given titles by somebody, a licensed, a registered architect. You're an architectural associate. You're an architectural designer. any one of these that you see up here. Um, so so you're kind of in a dilemma. I'm here just trying to gain experience. I'm, way down here and they're up here, they're licensed, I'm not. What do I do? So there is a rule that applies to the principal or the person that gave that title to you. In other words, they're not supposed to do that. There's a rule that has to do with their responsibility to not basically help you violate the rule. So when that happens, when that's happened in the past, we will send an email to the firm, to the principal or whoever it is that's responsible for assigning titles, and make them aware of it. Um, Sometimes we hear that they sometimes even then they do it unknowingly. Sometimes they are not familiar with the rule. They know that you can't be called an architect if you're not registered, but they are not always aware that they can't call you an architectural associate or architectural designer. Um, in other cases, they're aware, but they're just, they want, what we hear is, well, we're trying to, they've worked so hard in their education. We want to give them a title that's more dignified than architectural intern. Well, it's a good intention, but it's also not following the rules. So if that does happen, what you should not do, that's not for you to worry about what they assign to you. What you should not do is carry that over into your own private social media. It's probably a great thing and feel very proud that you received that title, but remember this conversation or this presentation we had, and just remember that, with all the apps or platforms that are out there, you can't put that out there on your private, because that is your responsibility. You're in control of that. And the last thing we'd want you to do is be in violation, and then because the title law can result in a $3,000 penalty is nothing to, it's nobody wants to have to pay that. So we've talked about the title rule. That's real important to you all right now, or will be important to you. But another one that's important has to do with unauthorized practice, or offering architectural services, or engaging in unauthorized practice of architecture. So let me explain that a bit. The statute says that a person may not engage in the practice of architecture or offer or attempt to engage in the practice of architecture unless the person is duly registered with the board. Okay. It's the same thing for business. A business cannot offer architectural services or practice architecture unless they are doing it in accordance with the rule, and that is they have to have at least one architect on staff, or in what's called in association, and they have to be registered with the board. Okay. So some of you may, after you complete your education, we see this quite a bit too, is you gain tremendous amount of skill and ability to design. And we see so many design firms that are owned by non-registrants, and that's fine. That's great. There's quite a bit of project types that you can engage in and to practice on that do not require an architect. Okay, but you have to be careful about those two things, about the title usage and about the types of projects you engage on. So this is an example of a call that I get fairly often. So we get calls, and a person says, I'd like to file a complaint against the architect I hired. So when I take that call, one of the first things I do is I start asking them questions, of course. We start exchanging information. I ask them, well, what's the name of the person? I enter that name in our database, and sometimes it'll say no results found. There's no architect by that name. So let's try their business. Maybe that individual's not registered, but somebody in the business is. So I'll enter the business. We should have a registration for them on record if they are. And again, no record found. So um, these are the examples that have to do with unauthorized use of title and offering and engaging in unauthorized practice. So these businesses, like I said, a business cannot cannot say they are an architectural studio. They cannot say we provide architectural design, architectural plans, or drawings. All of those things signify that you're offering architectural services. So though you may not individually be calling yourself an architect or an architectural designer, if you're saying that your business, your design business provides any of these services or is named that way, that's a violation. So as an example, when the offering part, if you have a business and you offer services, usually there's a contract. I'll usually ask them, did this person have a contract with you? And surprisingly, a lot of them do not. And there's a lot of money involved, which is really surprising and sad to me because, there's no insurance or assurance that, the person's going to follow through. But anyway, there's oftentimes there's a contract, and I'll say, okay, send that contract over to me. So this is an example of the type of stuff that we see. Can y'all see that okay? Do y'all see anything on there that looks problematic in terms of a business that's doesn't have an architect or not registered? Well, things that are problematic are the use of calling the business an architectural design business, describing the scope of services as architectural services, and even describing the plan sheets as architectural sheets. Okay, all of those things are examples of offering and shouldn't be used by non-registrants. Okay, the next thing is I'll say, how about plans? Have they issued plans to you? Yes. Okay, we have a look at those and we see architectural on there, and that's a big problem because that amounts to engaging in the practice of architecture. Okay, even if it's a project that does not require an architect, like a single family residential home in Texas is exempt. If you tell somebody, I'm going to provide architectural service to you, if you put architectural a name on your plans and issue plans to them, you've engaged in the unauthorized practice of architecture, and that's a very serious violation, and it's usually like a $5,000 administrative penalty. So in that case, there would probably be a title violation of $3,000 and offering and engaging in unauthorized practice. It could be as much as $8,000 for that little scenario right there. I mentioned that some projects types require an architect and some don't. For future reference, or anytime you have your first project for pay that you're going to get involved with, there's a way to avoid or making sure that you're not practicing on a project that requires an architect. At the board, on our website, we have two sources. We have or resources. We have a flow chart that's used by lots of people that are for this very purpose. A lot of times, municipalities, permitting offices, where they see plans come through and they question whether or not it requires an architect, they use our flow chart to see if that project required an architect. Some people find this one a little bit confusing, all the different arrows and stuff. We have another tool that's very useful and user friendly. It's an interactive tool. You click to start and you start entering. It starts asking you questions. What is this? A single family residential home? It starts asking you questions about the project. As you answer yes or no, it keeps asking you more questions till ultimately it tells you whether or not that project has to have an architect on it. Okay, so remember that as a resource for you in the future. Our quarterly licensing news goes out to approximately 31,000 recipients, and so it's a really good resource to have. Now, one of the things that Mike mentioned is that in terms of both registrants and non-registrants is the disciplinary actions are publicized or are noted in the newsletter. And most people architects are more worried about their name being in the quarterly newsletter than they are about the actual fine themselves. But anyway, just as an example, I just posted or put up several examples of non-registrants that were engaged in the things that I was just describing and the various administrative penalties that were assessed by the board. 4,000, 5,000, 10,000. I mean, and they can go up from there depending on how many and how severe or what projects, how many projects they were engaged in. 21,000 and 31,000 have been some of our most serious cases that we've had recently.
That's my favorite part of the newsletter.
Yes, most people say I skip through all that stuff and go straight to the back. Make sure my name's not on there. Anyway, in summary, we kind of zipped through this, but I asked if we could, the enforcement department can come out to the different universities and colleges because of all the title cases that we have per year. As I said, most of them are people that have gone through a program in, all the different programs. And unfortunately, either whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, they're using the title or misusing the title. So make sure you remember that. And also when you do become registered, there's a whole bunch of other rules that that you're required to follow. And as we say in the enforcement department, it's always better if you call us. We're a resource. It's always better if you call us than if we're calling you. So make sure to use us as a resource. We get calls on a daily basis and emails. So with that, that pretty much wraps it up for us. And
all right,
I don't know if we have.
If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and I'll let you use the microphone so everybody can hear. Questions? Yeah.
You briefly mentioned a newsletter. I believe I heard something of it. What is the name of it?
It's the TBAE newsletter.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, tbae.texas.gov, you can see the newsletter is one of the links. Then you can go through all, probably about 10 years worth. You can see what happened 10 years ago. They're all online.
And it's full of a lot of information. My favorite part is reading to see who gets in trouble and how much they have to pay. But there's a lot of really good information. Before we go to any more questions, I did want to present to you Patricia. She's back there. She's the one that was on the website or the PowerPoint. So if you have any questions, she's the one to go to. Any other questions?
We'll stick around for a few minutes if y'all want to just have a personal question.
All right. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.